What if the secret to a good life was never about following bigger rules, but about getting the small, ordinary moments exactly right? Confucius never wrote a system. He never claimed to have discovered some grand cosmic truth. Instead, he spent his life obsessing over something almost embarrassingly small: how you treat the people directly in front of you, every single day. At the center of Confucius's teaching sits a concept that resists easy translation. Rien, often rendered as humanness, benevolence, or simply human-heartedness. Ren isn't a rule you follow. It's closer to a quality of character, the capacity to genuinely feel for other people, and to let that feeling shape how you act toward them. Confucius describes it in one of his most famous formulations as simply this: what you do not wish for yourself, do not do to others. Notice what this isn't. It isn't a commandment handed down from outside. It isn't a legal code with punishments attached. It's an appeal to something already present in you, your own capacity for empathy, asking you to actually use it, consistently, even when it's inconvenient. Confucius believed Ren couldn't be taught through lecture alone. It had to be practiced in small daily interactions until it became habitual. The way a musician doesn't think about individual notes anymore after years of practice, but simply plays. Moral character, for Confucius, works the same way. Not a rule memorized, but a disposition trained through repetition until it becomes who you are. Confucius's second major idea is even harder for modern audiences to warm to at first. Lie, usually translated as ritual, propriety, or ceremony. To modern ears, ritual can sound stiff, empty, performative, the opposite of genuine feeling. But that's not what Confucius meant. For him, li was the outward form that inner respect naturally takes. The specific, concrete ways you show someone that you see them, that you take the relationship seriously. A greeting, a gesture of deference to someone older, the particular way you speak to a grieving friend versus a colleague at work. Confucius's insight here is subtle. Feelings alone, without any outward form, tend to stay vague and often go unexpressed. Ritual gives inner virtue a shape, a way to actually reach another person, instead of remaining a private feeling that never leaves your own head. Think of it less like empty formality and more like the difference between silently loving someone and actually telling them, showing up for them, doing the small concrete things that let them feel it. The danger Confucius warns against is lie without Ren, going through the motions of respect with no real feeling behind them. That, he says clearly, is empty. The goal was never ritual for its own sake. It was ritual. Confucius's Analects return constantly to a figure he calls the Junzi, often translated gentleman, noble person, or exemplary person. Crucially, for Confucius, this was not a matter of birth or social rank. It was a matter of cultivated character, available in principle to anyone willing to do the inner work. The Junzi is contrasted throughout the Analects with the petty person, someone driven by immediate self-interest, quick to blame others, inconsistent in their conduct, depending on who's watching. The Junzi, by contrast, holds themselves to the same standard, whether observed or alone. They seek what's right, rather than merely what's advantageous, and they take responsibility for their own failures rather than deflecting blame outward. one of Confucius's most demanding standards for the Junzi. Even in poverty, remain without bitterness. Even in wealth, remain without arrogance. Character, in other words, isn't circumstantial. It's not something you get to set aside because life is hard, and it's not something you get to abandon once life is easy. It's a constant standard you hold, regardless of your external situation, which is precisely what makes it difficult, and precisely what makes it meaningful. Confucius's ideas can feel almost radically modern once you strip away their ancient setting. The idea that character is built through small, repeated daily practice rather than sudden transformation lines up closely with what contemporary psychology says about habit formation. You don't become patient by deciding to be patient once. You become patient by practicing patience in 100 small, unglamorous moments. The concept of Li also offers something genuinely useful for modern relationships. The reminder that good intentions which never take outward form often fail to land. You can feel enormous gratitude toward a friend and never once say it. You can respect a colleague deeply and never once show it in how you treat them. Confucius's insight is that the outward gesture isn't fake or secondary. It's often the only part of your feeling that the other person actually gets to receive. And the Junzi standard, consistent character whether observed or alone, in hardship or in comfort, a brief note on the man himself. Confucius lived roughly 25 centuries ago, working for a time in minor government roles before spending much of his life teaching students and traveling in search of a ruler who would put his ideas into practice, largely without success in his own lifetime. Like Epictetus, he never personally wrote down his teachings. The Analects were compiled after his death by his students. Confucius never promised a dramatic transformation or a single revelation that would fix your life. What he offered instead was smaller, and in some ways, harder. The patient, daily work of treating the people in front of you with genuine care, showing that care in visible ways, and holding yourself to the same standard, whether anyone is watching or not. 25 centuries later, that modest ambition still holds. If this kind of thinking speaks to you, subscribe to Saga Thinks. We're building a complete library of humanity's essential ideas, one book at a time. Let us know in the comments which thinker you want to see next.